Hare Krishna, Bhayahari Prabhuji, Dhanma Pranam. Please accept our humble obeisances. All praise to Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna, Raghunath Prabhu. Hare Krishna, everyone. I hope all of you are
Hare Krishna.
happy, Kartik.
Yeah, it was a festival week with Diwali, Govardhan, Bhaiya Dooj. A lot of people celebrate Bhaiya Dooj.
Annakut.
And
That is my excuse for not being able to record the lectures. But I hope to do it before the weekend. So once again, Hare Krishna, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. We'll start with Manglacharan, and then we'll do an overview of the 11th chapter. And after that, any question answers either on the 10th chapter or they aren't recorded lectures, but based on anything that you hear during my presentation on the 11th chapter. So any Q&A after that. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Agyantimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Nama Om Shabadaya Krishna Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunavadi Pashachade Shatarane. So we'll start with the 11th chapter today. So 11th chapter in a way is kind of the gateway chapter to the third module. I know there's one more chapter left, but 11th chapter is the last long chapter in the Bhagavad Gita. So it's got 55 verses in it. And the only other long chapter is, of course, the 18th chapter, which has 78 verses. But all the other chapters, 12 through 15, very small chapters, 20 verses, 25, 26 verse, 27. With the exception of the 13th chapter, which is 35 verses, also still short. So the plan is to go through these chapters rather quickly. I'm hoping to do them each chapter one chapter a week, which means that we'll do the presentations, the Q&A, and the overview in the same lecture. Now, obviously, we won't be able to do 6 presentations, but these chapters are so short that there is not enough verses for 6 groups. So we'll work out some pattern that not all the groups will be presenting every week, but enough either 3 or 2 there, because 20 verses dividing in 6 groups, you just get about 3 to 4 verses per group. Also, content-wise, they're very condensed. There isn't a whole spread of content that's going down. So we'll definitely not rush, because the purpose of the Bhakti Shastri is to take an opportunity to understand the content. But from prior experience, my understanding is that This is something we should be able to do in a single class. However, I'm open if the devotees feel that um, that more time needs to be spent, we can definitely go back. Now, the 18th chapter obviously will be done over 2 classes. It's got 78 verses. But like I said, all the other chapters are, they have verses in the 20s, 20, 24, 26, small and compact. Okay, so let's start with the overview of the 11th chapter. I'll share my presentation. Okay, so this chapter is titled The Universal Form, or the Vishwarupa. So as usual, we'll do a quick recap to set the context of how this chapter is being spoken. So 6th chapter ends with Krishna glorifying. As a process of Astanga Yoga, Krishna is glorifying, thinking of him in Samadhi, right? So he's introducing himself as the object of meditation. Then in the 7th chapter, having introduced himself as the object, and as you note, until the 6th chapter, Krishna is mostly in the background. So now in the 7th chapter, he starts coming into the foreground, starts stepping into the spotlight that, of course, he himself is shining. So he first talks about himself, that who he is, how can he be perceived, his opulences in brief. And this is essentially for the aspiring devotee to relate to him. And then the 8th chapter, which is attaining the Supreme, which is how to reach him. Like I said, sometimes we mistake this chapter as the art of dying, but actually it's not the art of dying, it's the art of living. That how does one live in a Krishna conscious way? And the side effect of that is one dies in a Krishna conscious way. Right? So Krishna gives us glimpses into how can one live their life thinking about him, and also talks about the passage of the soul subsequent to the time of the death, and contrasts that between the devotees and the non-devotees. The underlying message being that for the non-devotees, they return to the cycle of birth and death, and the devotees, they do not. And the same demigods that are the object of worship of the non-devotees. Now, the non-devotees are not asuras, right? The non-devotees are karmakandis, gyankandis, different kind of pious people, ones who are essentially focusing on worshipping the devas. So the interesting point made in the 8th chapter is that the same devas who are worshipped by those in Karmakand and Gyan and Astankand essentially become the agents of liberation for the devotees. So we see how they cooperate with the jiva to help his passage beyond the material world. Right? So the point that is made is that one who performs bhakti, he already has performed everything else. Because if the devas were envious of one who performed bhakti, they would not actively assist the jiva in returning back to Godhead, but they do. And then in the 9th chapter, Krishna begins to speak about the execution of bhakti. And he gives many assurances to the devotees. So here Krishna begins to talk about the confidential mutual exchange between Krishna and his devotees. And Krishna reveals his vulnerable side over here, where he says that he becomes so indebted to the devotees that he is happily overlooking all their shortcomings, defects. He's happily carrying what they lack. And so some of those famous verses, Kshipati Bhavati Dharmatma, Shastram Shantam Digachati. Right? So he says that, Apiche Sudorachara. Even if the person is Sudorachara, I consider him to be a sadhureva yamanmante. I consider him to be a devotee. So we see Krishna talking about his confidential exchanges with the devotees. Then, beginning from the 10th chapter, Krishna begins to reveal how he can be perceived. So the 10th chapter contains the Chaturshloki, 10, 8, 9, 10, and 11, where Krishna talks about how he can be seen. Aham sarvasya prabhu matata sarvam pravartate. And he also talks about how he reciprocates the conduct of the devotees. So these 4 verses carry the essence of the development of devotional service. And then Krishna, of course, talks about in 20 verses, he talks about his opulences. That how does one see Krishna? And as I had mentioned, that in the 10th chapter, Krishna says, see me in the material world. And then in the 11th chapter, he will say, see the material world in me. And in the 12th chapter, he will say, see me as everything, independent of the material and spiritual worlds. So he is taking us and Arjuna through progressively deeper states of realizations. So in the end of the 10th chapter, after Krishna described all his opulences, he says, what is the need for me to describe all this opulence? So with a single fragment of myself, I pervade the entire universe, right? So this is Krishna, in a way, laying the seed of the next chapter, because this is what will evoke the curiosity of Arjuna. Tell me more about that fragment by which you pervade the entire universe. Because after describing all his opulences, Krishna says, and he prefaces it also by saying that I have too many opulences to talk about, so I'll just talk about a few pramukh main ones. And then he concludes also. He says that even though I said they are main, but they're actually very small part of me. How small? That all these opulences in this universe that you see, that I have described and not described, they are but a small portion of me. And so this is the launching point for the 11th chapter, where Krishna says, Arjuna will say to Krishna, please show me that fragment that pervades the universe. So at a broad level, the chapter is divided into 3 sections. The first 8 verses is Arjuna placing his request before Krishna. That show me that fragment of yours. Then in the next 26 verses, Krishna will show his universal form. And we will see that the universal form is described by 2 people, or rather by 3 people, in 2 ways. So firstly, Sanjay describes what Arjuna is seeing. Then Arjuna describes what he sees as the Vishwarupa. So this is Krishna's universal form spread over space. And then Arjuna describes what he sees as time. So this is Krishna's Kal Roop. This is Krishna's form as time, past, present, and future. And the third section is essentially prayers by Arjun. What does Arjun do after seeing the universal form? Because remember, in the 10th chapter, after Krishna recited the Chaturshloki, Arjun is bowled over. He says, you are the supreme, you are the Brahman, not only me, but sages like Asita and Devala and Narad say that. Now you are saying it yourself, you are the Lord of the Lord. So he's completely in raptures at the divinity of his friend. Prabhupada says that Arjun now says that who we consider to be his friend also happens to be God. And Arjun is full of ecstasy. And here again, when Krishna has reveals another form of it, we see Arjun displaying different kinds of emotions. And so we see the prayer by Arjun. The third section is also important because it establishes the philosophical basis also of Krishna's various forms. So as I mentioned, that the flow through the chapter is Krishna progressively revealing himself more and more. Right? So in the 9th chapter, he reveals himself as Tattva, as philosophical understanding, right? Especially Dachinta Veda Ved Tattva. Right? So this is Krishna revealing himself as a principle. Right? So fairly abstract, philosophical perspective. In the 10th chapter, Krishna reveals himself as everything in the material world. Right? And then we had said that this is something that attracts the Brahmavadis, who are attracted to Krishna's pervasiveness. They see Krishna everywhere in everything. They see Krishna as the best of the devas. They see Krishna as the best of the snakes, as the best of the cheats. So everything that they see around themselves, the sun, the moon, the stars, the ability in man, they see Krishna. Right? So this is the mood of the Brahmavadis. In the 11th chapter, Krishna teaches us how to appreciate everything within him. Right? So I mentioned 10th chapter is seeing Krishna in matter, and the 11th chapter is seeing matter in Krishna. Now matter also includes time here. So that's why I've said everything, seeing everything in Krishna. And this is the meditation of the yogis. They meditate on the Virat Roop. They look at the universe and they see the form of Krishna. So this is a form that is also described in a fair amount of details in the Bhagavatam. In fact, when Sukdev Goswami starts speaking to Parishad Maharaj, the first thing that he describes is Krishna's Virat Roop. Right? So he doesn't really go and talk about Krishna's personal form. Right? First thing he describes is Krishna's Virat Roop, how one can consider the rivers to be the veins in Krishna's body, the trees as the hair on his body, the sun and the moon as his eyes. So the same notion of seeing the universe within Krishna, right? So attracting the mind of the yogis. And the 12th chapter is simply appreciating Krishna. So the limitation in the 10th and 11th is that one's appreciation of Krishna is predicated on something else. Whether you see Krishna in matter or matter in Krishna, the appreciation is predicated on matter. But in the 12th chapter, Krishna says, I'm independent of everything. Matter, no matter, even the spiritual world, independent of everything. So the devotees appreciate Krishna as Swayam Bhagwan, who is completely Atmaram, self-sufficient, who is completely independent, somebody who exists before the material creation, during and after the material creation. So in this way, Krishna is guiding Arjuna and us through progressively deeper levels of appreciation. Sometimes as devotees, we think that by the mercy of Prabhupada and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we already have developed an appreciation for the personal form of Krishna. So the 10th and the 11th chapters are distracting for us. But actually, as long as we are not pure devotees, we do need to take shelter of whatever way we can think of Krishna. And the essence of sadhana Vedi bhakti is to always remember Krishna and never forget Krishna. So until we are at the spontaneous point of always remembering Krishna, which is an advanced stage, it starts happening after Bhava stage, we have to take support of other things. So what are the other things? It is seeing matter in Krishna and Krishna in matter. And Prabhupada would say, and this is his instruction to devotees, that when you drink water, think that Krishna is the taste of water. Right? Now that obviously is, actually, I think it comes in chapter 7, but same, it's seeing Krishna in matter. Right? When you see the sun, you see that, okay, that's the eye of Krishna. Right? So even as devotees, we take shelter of both the realizations of the 10th and the 11th chapter, but to support our progress in devotion. We don't let it eclipse it. But the chapters are important for us. And that's why Prabhupada wrote extensive purports on it. So the 9th chapter, as I mentioned, is Krishna explaining himself by logic. By 11th chapter, through analogies. Like, the foremost amongst men is king. So I am the foremost amongst everybody. The foremost among the fishes is the shark. So I am the foremost amongst everybody. Right? Or the essence of a person is ability. So I am the ability of the person. So as we know, the analogies are expressed in two categories, the foremost and the essence. Right? So Krishna, and of course the question is always there. When Krishna says that amongst men I am king, does not mean that the king is Krishna. Right? Krishna is essentially using as an analogy that just like the king occupies a foremost position amongst the people, I am foremost amongst everybody else. In the 11th chapter, it becomes more experiential. Right? The 9th is completely mental. 9th, logic, philosophy. 10th chapter is you see something. So there is an element of seeing. You see the king, and you say that how this king is being venerated by everybody, and Krishna is venerated by everybody. So there is an aspect of empirical observation. In the 11th chapter, it is almost entirely experiential. Right? Of course, whatever Krishna speaks, there is philosophy, but the experiential part of it is now predominant there. Like we see how Arjuna reacts to seeing the various universal forms. And this is what we will be doing in the 11th chapter. 12th chapter is direct experience. Right? Yehi samparsh jab hoga, right? So devotees, they by their senses, they experience devotional service. And that, like Prabhupada says, by your tongue you taste, by your nose you smell the incense, by your hands you serve the deities. So it is experiential. It's not whimsically experiential. It is backed by everything else. It is backed by the logic of the 9th chapter. It's backed by an understanding of Krishna's position through analogies in the 10th or through the vision in 11th. But it is direct experience. Right? That is the unique aspect of devotion. So let's look at the section by section of the 11th chapter. So the first chapter is the prayers by Arjun to Krishna to reveal his universal form. Right? So in the 10th chapter, Arjun has been listening with rapt attention as Krishna is revealing himself as the essence of everything, or the best of the best. Right? So he now asking Krishna that what fragment of your pervades this entire material manifestation. Now, of course, everything that Arjun does has a purpose. He is a pure devotee. He is doing a service on our behalf. So why does Arjun ask Krishna to show this? And the acharyas, they explain a little bit of inside information. So first is, it's the nature of attraction. That if one person is attracted to another, it's the nature of the attraction that the person wants to know more and more about that person. And the example is given that there are sometimes people who are who become like big fans of movie stars. And pretty much then they make it their life's mission to know everything about that movie star. What does he do or she does? What food he likes? Where was that person yesterday? What are the relationships? Now, they have nothing to do with the person. They will never meet that person. The person does not know that they exist. But it's the nature of affection that one wants to know more and more. So same mood we see for Parikshit Maharaj, where he inquires deeper and deeper because of his absorption in the subject, right? Sukdev Goswami would say that could say to Parikshit Maharaj that you're going to die in 7 days. Just sit and chant Hare Krishna. Why are you asking about the structure of the universe? Why are you asking about the Virat Roop? Right? But Sukdev Goswami understands that Parikshit Maharaj's questions are driven by his affection for the Lord. That what else can my Lord do? What are the other glories of my Lord? So similarly, Arjun, he wants to know more. After hearing the Chaturshloki, he has already declared Krishna as the personality of Godhead. Nothing remains after that. Right? But his affection drives him to know greater details. Then the second is that Arjun wants to show others beyond doubt that Krishna is indeed God. Because Krishna's position may be challenged, and even despite this is challenged. Some people say Krishna was a politician, or he was expert in manipulating people. Some say that he was empowered by the demigod. So all kind of things say. But when Arjuna asks Krishna to show the universal form, and Krishna does, then for one who's sincerely following this conversation with faith, will accept the fact that Krishna is indeed God. And Prabhupada says that Arjuna also wants to establish a standard for future gods, and within quotes, because at least in Kali Yuga, it's fashionable for people to become gods, right? There are literally thousands of gods in India. Some of them have Facebook pages, and then they post their godly realizations. Somebody had once sent me a link to a Facebook page of somebody, I forget his name, but he was a young person, I think maybe in his early 20s, and he was declared as God. And people, there's always, Prabhupada will say, for everybody who is um, uh, who is waiting to be cheated, there is somebody ready to cheat. So he also had a big following. And then as it happened, this person, he got implicated with some women and he went to jail. Which I think was not in India, I think in South Africa or something like that. He went to jail and then he stayed there for a while and then he released. So the particular snippet that was sent to me was him after he got released from jail, and he was talking to his so-called devotees. And he was saying, I could have because I'm God, I could have easily changed all this. But remember, when I came as Krishna, I was born in a prison. So I was simply replaying my prison pastimes. So Prabhupada would say for such people, one should ask that if you're God, show me your universal form. And if they say that you are not qualified to see the universal form, then say that Krishna, he gave Arjuna the qualification to see. So give us the qualification. When Mahaprabhu was there, on several occasions he revealed his universal form. And especially once for a long time, he revealed his universal form. At other times, he showed it to different devotees. And Mahaprabhu wanted to honor the standard set by Krishna. That if you are God, show your Vishwarupa, show your Kal Rupa. Right? So to establish standard to protect us from future cheaters. So when Krishna reveals his universal form to Arjun, he first reveals his Vishwarupa. So as you know, in this universe, there are two things that make one unique. One is space and the other is time. And so if I say that I have to meet you, then I have to give you two things. Where will I meet you and when will I meet you? Right? So space and time are two inviolate constraints of the universe. That if they were not, then I would say I will meet you here. But if that here is not unequivocal, then it could be here or maybe there or maybe somewhere else. Right? But when I say here, if there is only one position that it points to. And when I say at 10 a.m., then it means that time. So essentially the universe is defined by these two aspects of space and time. And Krishna will reveal his form as both space and time, as Vishwarup and Kalrup, to show that from both the perspectives, the universe is contained within him. So as Vishwarupa, Krishna not only shows all the planets, all the solar systems, the stars, but also all the personalities, the devas, all of them within his form for Arjuna to see. And the universal form is mostly described through analogies, right? So it's if 1,000 suns were to rise at once, the radiance might resemble the effulgence of the Supreme Person. So might resemble means that it is a distant representation of the actual effulgence of the Supreme Lord. So generally it is difficult to describe a picture with words. Right? So if you see something, you see a building that you like, and somebody comes and say that, describe to me, even if you're expert in remembering what you saw, you're expert in speaking, it is difficult. So generally you take shelter of of comparisons. I saw that building. It had white marble like the Taj Mahal. It had long steeples like the Qutub Minar. So you try and compare it with known landmarks, and that kind of helps the person get a visual image, which is what Arjun and Sanjay are doing. That they're comparing it with things that one has more practical experience with. Right. So we see that within this universal form, the demigods are standing and praying to them. Right. So the point is that not only Arjun, but even the demigods could see the universal form. And there's some discussion about who all could see the universal form. I'll cover that a little bit more when I discuss the verses, the relevant verses. But the fact that we see that the devas praying to the universal form in fear, it establishes two things. One is that it was not only Arjun who was seeing the universal form, otherwise others could say that Arjun imagined it. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that if Arjun was the only one to see the universal form, then others would say this is like a person seeing chariots in the dream. And he gets up and says that I saw this big chariot with effulgent wheels and big flag. And somebody says, who else saw it? So nobody else, just me. But so, oh, probably you were dreaming. So Krishna wants to make sure that the vision of Arjun is validated by others. And also shows the position of the devas with respect to Krishna. If Krishna was at the same level of the devas, then devas would not be standing with folded hands in front of Krishna, trying to pacify him with Vedic hymns. So we see all the varieties of human beings, all the varieties of demigods, even great demigods. So we see Brahma, we see Lord Shiva. So the Adityas, Vasu, Sadhya. So these all come in the 33 prominent devas, but not just them, but also the ones who are not that prominent, like the Yakshas and the Gandharvas, even the Asuras. They were all given the vision to see the universal form. Right? And Arjun says, although you are one, you are spread throughout the sky. So, as a devotee, Arjun does not lose the sense of perspective. So it's not that when Arjun saw the universal form, he said, okay, I made a mistake, Krishna. I thought you were a person, but now I realize that you're actually diffused energy. Right? So that is what Krishna wants us to develop, that mood also. That we don't lose sight of his Swayam, his Manushya Rupa, his human-like form. And we don't lose sight of Krishna's personal form. But we also understand that while Krishna is residing in Golok Vrindavan in his personal form, by his energies, he is pervading the entire universe. We can't do that. Nobody else can do that, but Krishna can do that. Krishna wants us to understand that. Once Arjun's vision has been purified by the Vishwarupa, then Krishna reveals an even more confidential form of his, which is the Kal Rupa. So Vishwarupa is more tangible. That I go to Paris and I see the Eiffel Tower, I go to India and I see the Taj Mahal. So it's more tangible. But Kal Rupa is seeing the past, present, and future. Difficult for the mind to absorb that. That if it is now, it cannot be tomorrow, and it cannot be yesterday. But Krishna says, yes, it can be yesterday, tomorrow, and now at the same time. It is an even more bewildering form. And we see the difference in Arjun's reaction. When Arjun sees Krishna's Vishvarupa, his reaction is Adbhut Rasa. So Adbhut Rasa is wonderment. When he sees Krishna's Kal Rupa, his reaction is fear. So Ghor Rasa is terrified of it. Because the essential nature of time is destruction. Right? So we may measure time by sunrises, but essentially it is just a mnemonic. All that we are doing is we are measuring the destructive cycles of time. So people say that with every sunrise, it's a new day. And Prabhupada once made this point that why do people celebrate birthdays? They're actually death days. Because it means that you have one less year to live now. Right? In the Bhagavatam, it's mentioned, it's in the third canto, that every breath we take takes us one breath closer to our death. And every sunrise that we witness takes us one sunrise closer to the last sunrise that we will see. So even though time may manifest itself as new beginnings and a new era, etc., but the uniform characteristics of time is that it is always destroying. And that's why time is represented as Lord Shiva, time is represented as Anantashesh, so destructive nature of time. So Krishna shows his Kal Rupa where he's killing everybody. All the sons of Dhritarashtra, Bhishma, Drona, Karna, all the soldiers from both the sides, they are drawn into Krishna's mouth as death. Right? And Arjun uses two analogies, that of the rivers and the moth. So the rivers are helplessly driven because the ocean sucked the rivers. So the rivers don't have a choice. They don't say we'll start flowing upstream from now. So they don't have a choice. They get sucked into by the ocean. But the moths, they fly into the fire. On their own accord, they fly. Right? So Arjun talks about these two categories of people. That the non-devotees, they are sucked into death. But those who have an understanding of Krishna, it's not that they are looking for immortality, but they approach death with the understanding that it is a form of Krishna. Okay, and then Arjun asks that, who are you? Why have you come? Tell me what your mission is. And Krishna says this famous words, Kalovasmi, time I am. So interestingly, for those of you who have seen that movie Oppenheimer, when he witnessed the first nuclear test and he saw the massive explosion, then he actually recited the same. He was also a Sanskrit scholar. Impersonalist, of course. I guess he was not even impersonal. He was just doing his own stuff. He was saying stuff that he could understand on his own. But at least he appreciated this Krishna's form as time as destruction. Right. So he actually recited this sentence, Kalo Asmi. Right. So one can appreciate Krishna as the entirety of the creation, and one can also experience Krishna as the predominating factor in the material world that is destroying everything. Right? So one thing that is universal in the material world is destruction. You build a house, you know that it's going to get destroyed. There are civilizations that came, they flourished, and they got destroyed, right? So that is the destructive effect of time. And the lesson for us is to apply this to ourselves, that we know that everything that we are aspiring for outside bhakti will be destroyed by time. The wealth and the position and the opulences and the quarrels that we are nourishing with other people, the ego that we are nourishing, the desire for revenge, everything that we are nourishing, all that gets destroyed with time. So the only thing that is worth cultivating is that which is not destroyed by time, which would be a segue to the 12th chapter, right? So that's where Krishna lays the foundation of pure devotional service. And Prabhupada makes this point from a preaching perspective. This is not to create a negative impact, not a fatalistic mood that everything is going to get destroyed, so what's the point? Let me not even try. Let me not build a house because it will get destroyed. Let me not get a job because what's the point? It will get destroyed. Right? That is mode of ignorance. That is tamasa. But the underlying desire is to set the proper mood that everything that I'm doing will get destroyed. So best is for me to do it for the pleasure of Krishna. Right? The Krishna factor changes fallible to infallible. All the activities that we do that are centered towards Krishna, they don't get destroyed. They are beyond time. Every obeisance that we give to the deities, Prabhupada once said that every screw that you twist, and this was more in connection with Rath Yatra cart being made. So even a small screw that you twist, Krishna will remember that this person did this. Person bhakti would do. What was the devotee's name? Jaydev, I think. He was expert. He was one of the first one who did the Rath Yatra cart construction.
Was it Nanda Prabhu?
Jayananda.
Jayananda Prabhu.
Jayananda, thank you, right? Jayananda. We actually, whenever there is a Rath Yatra done even today, there's a picture of him on the cart, right? And he was an expert at this. He was right in the middle of the hippie district, and people would be literally drugged out, and he would just say, "Can you hand me that screwdriver?" Right? And then people would give their. And that's how he engaged Jayapataka Maharaj, actually. Jayapataka Maharaj was also kind of in that hippie mode, and he started engaging him in the building of the cart. There were people who were building carving the deities, and they would be essentially smoking and putting the cigarette packs on the deities. And Jayananda would just keep, he understood this principle that Prabhupada had established, that any activities done for Krishna, we may forget, but Krishna does not. Right? So that's the reason why this distinction between material and spiritual is made. Now, this whole, I don't know if our present group has this question, but every time I do the Bhakti Shastri, we have extended discussions about is the universal form real or not? Is it material or spiritual? So what I did was to preempt it. I created a set of slides that tries to address the topic, and we can of course have discussion on that. So I'm kind of explaining it using an analogy. So I think it's important for everybody to see the screen to be able to get a full understanding of what I'm trying to explain. So the first picture is essentially clouds in the sky, right? And we have personal experience of it. We look at the cloud in the sky, and sometimes the clouds have shapes. Sometimes they have a shape. You can see that maybe there's a person there. Sometimes it looks like a bird. Sometimes it looks like an airplane. And at least as kids, we used to do that. We used to point out at clouds and say, this cloud looks like that, etc. So this is clouds in the sky that kind of look like a lion. Right? So naturally occurring. There's a cloud shaped like a lion in the sky. Now the question is the lion real? Like if I say to you, look at those clouds in the sky that is shaped like a lion. Now, is the lion real? Does the lion exist? And the answer is yes. If you go to the jungle, you'll see a lion. Are the clouds real? And the answer is yes. They are there in the sky. Is there a lion in the clouds? The answer is no. Right? So while I tell you that look at that lion in the sky within the clouds, and the underlying components are real. The cloud is real, the lion is real, but there is no lion in the sky. Right? The shape of the lion in the cloud is real. Right? So all that is empirically true. But is there a lion in the clouds? No, there is no lion there. So similarly, Krishna shows his universal form in material nature. Now think of this as seeing the shape of the lion in the clouds in the sky. Is Krishna real? Yes, Krishna is real. Is the material universe real? Yes. It is temporary, but nevertheless, it is real. Is the universal form real? No. Right? Just like there is no lion in the sky, there is no universal form that is eating the Kauravas and the Pandavas. There is no universal form that has the sun and the moon as his eyes. Right? So while Krishna is real, while the universe is real, while the manifestation of Krishna in the universe is real, the universal form is not real. Right? So this is a way to understand it. And in the verses, the acharyas give a more detailed explanation, which I will attempt to do. But of course, maybe I'll try and show the PowerPoint over there also. But sometimes a picture is more effective. So one might say that many saw the universal form. Not just Arjun, but Sanjay saw it, the sages saw it, Devas saw it. Because, as I mentioned, Vishwanath Chakravarti says that all these people saw it because Krishna wanted to make sure that it is not misunderstood as Arjun's mental speculation. So Arjun saw what Krishna wanted him to see. So when there is a magician on the stage, the magician will take out a rabbit from the hat. Now, all the 100 people sitting in the audience will see that rabbit come out of the hat. Now, did the magician actually create a rabbit out of the hat? No. But did the rabbit come out of the hat? Yes. So did Arjun see what Krishna showed him? Yes. So that is why Krishna is called the master of the mystics. Right? So Krishna showed the universal form. Arjun saw what Krishna showed him. Right? Just like the audience see what the magicians want them to see. But does that mean that there is a rabbit living in the hat? No. So does that mean that there is Krishna in one form with fire coming from the mouth and with the form spread over planets? No, it does not mean that. Right? And Prabhupada, at different points in the purport, he will make this point. So the forms represent Krishna in space and time, which are Krishna's own energy, right? So important to understand that this form is an illusion that was created by Krishna to make this point. Right? Because if the universal form is spiritual, then the nature of spirituality is that it is eternal. But it cannot be eternal because the material world is temporary. So what happens to the universal form when the universe gets destroyed? If it is completely predicated on matter, then it would also get destroyed. Right? So anything spiritual cannot depend on material. When we pray to the deities are material, they're made out of dhatu, but they're spiritualized because Krishna empowers them. And if they're not worshipped, then Krishna takes away his empowerment. They go back to being material. Right? So it's not that Krishna becomes trapped within the deities. So in conclusion, the Virat Purush is an imagination of the speculative philosophers who are unable to adjust to the eternal two-handed form of Krishna. So this is Prabhupada's statement. Right? Now, it's not an imagination in the sense that they imagine it on their own, but it's an imagination that is bestowed by Krishna on the speculative philosopher. And later on, Prabhupada says, the devotees who are correctly situated in a transcendental relationship with Krishna are attracted by loving features, not by a godless display of opulences. So Prabhupada describes the universal form as a godless display of opulences. Then we come to the prayers by Arjun, right? So Arjun is now seeing it. He has gone through stages of wonderment and fear, and now he begins to glorify Krishna once again, like he did in the 10th chapter. Now he's once again glorifying Krishna, but more fervently now, right? Having witnessed the forms. And he said, I offer my respectful obeisance unto you 1,000 times, and again, and yet, okay. Please bestow your grace upon me and reveal again your form as the personality of Godhead. Right? So this is an important juncture in the statement. That after having seen Krishna's universal form, Arjun actually develops an aversion for him. So he begins to pray. So this is the first same Arjun who was first praying to Krishna, please show me your universal form. Now he's saying that please take away your universal form. Why? Because the mood of a devotee is that they're attracted to the personal form of Krishna. Why? Because only with the personal form can you have a relationship. So if you look at the 5 rasas, you cannot have any of the 5 rasas with the universal form. You cannot have Sakhya, Dasya, Vatsalya. You can obviously not have Madhurya. So it's devoid of all rasas. And the nature of a devotee is that they are looking for the mellows. So Arjun quickly begins to pray to Krishna that once again show me that beautiful form of yours. So the non-acceptance of the universal form by Arjun is also a reflection on us, how we as devotees should aspire to relate to anything other than the personal form of Krishna. So Arjun had a Sakhya ras. He had a friendly relationship with Krishna. He would sometimes wrestle with him, joke with him, sometimes insult him, right? And he did not appreciate the awe and fear that the universal form inspired. And as a devotee, personal form of Krishna, because you can have a relationship with it. So Krishna is always ready to respond to the prayers of his devotees. And in the concluding part of the chapter, Krishna reveals his four-armed form and then back to his two-armed form. Right? So first he shows his form in Vaikuntha as Chaturbhuja, holding the Shankha Chakra Gada and Padma, and then he reveals his loving two-armed form to Arjuna. Right? And he also sets the stage for the 12th chapter. The last verse of the 11th chapter, 1155, is considered to be the essence of the Bhagavad Gita. And there are 10 verses in the Bhagavad Gita that capture the essence in different ways. So we have the Chaturshloki, the 10.8, 9, 10, 11. Then we have the Trishloki, which is the 15th chapter, verse 16, 17, 18. Then in 18th chapter, we have two verses, 1865 and 1866. And I forget the particular name, but they also capture. 1866 is it captures the mood of surrender. 1865 is Guyam, I think. And then 1155, it captures the essence of devotional service. And that one verse, it captures Sambandha, Abhidaya, and Prayojan, the essence of devotion. So summation, Arjuna requests Krishna to show the universal form. Krishna agrees, but shows and gives him divine vision. Arjuna first sees Vishwarupa, then he sees Kalrupa. Then he asks Krishna to withdraw his ghastly form, and he once again sees Krishna in the loving two-armed form. So Krishna essentially is providing various ways to understand his greatness and to surrender unto him. Right? So this brings us to the end of the 11th chapter. So I will stop over here, and I actually have gone a little bit over time. I'm sorry about that. But if there are any questions that I can take, maybe I'll take 5 more minutes. Are there any questions? Shri Padma, please go ahead.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you so much for the class. I've been trying to answer the question from 11.5. How does the universal form differ from the other forms of the Lord? And based on what you just said, is it because I'm not understanding manifest, the verse that says universal form is manifest and unmanifest? Is that the answer, or does it differ because it does not encompass, it's not just a personal form of the Lord, the other forms are personal? What is the proper understanding? Thank
So
you.
a couple of ways that we can understand this, that the other forms of Krishna, they are spiritual, the universal form is material, the other forms are real, the universal form is imaginary. The other forms of Krishna aspire different mellows of love and affection. The universal form inspires awe and fear in others, and the other forms attract devotees. The universal form does not. And so there are 4 or 5 ways that we can understand the difference.
Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Thank you. Okay, so if there are no more questions, we will stop over here, and Rup Raghunath Prabhu will share with you the topics for the groups. And so next week we will do in-depth Q&A for this chapter, and then we will do the 6 group presentations, and then start off following week with the 12th chapter. Yeah, very good. वाञ्छकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितनाम पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। श्रीला प्रभुपाद की जय।
जय।
निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे।
हरे
Thank you so
Hare
much.
Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you. Thank you,
Have a
Prabhuji.
Thank you,
wonderful day.
Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.